and good evening, everyone. In the auditorium right now, we have a panel discussion on policy education in India. This is a panel that has been convened by Ishani Mukherjee, Associate Professor, Singapore Management University, and along with Dayashankar Maurya, Assistant Professor, Graduate School of International Relations, International University of Japan. We have Professor R. Sudarshan, Dean Jindal School of Global Government and Public Policy, as the moderator for this panel discussion. Along with him, we have Professor Ramesh Ganeshan from IIMS Bangalore, and we have Professor Ashwini Chhatre, the Executive Director of the Bharati Institute of Public Policy at ISB. And also joining in this panel discussion, Professor Vishal Narayan from the Management Development Institute. We have an invited guest, Dr. Amar Patnaik, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Mentor School of Government and Public Affairs, Xavier's University. Welcome, panelists, and over to you, Ishani, to take it forward from here.
Thank you so much for those words of welcome, Arushi. Everybody, welcome to our panel. On behalf of myself and Dr. Dayashankar, I would really want to extend a warm welcome to a very high level panel of those who are actually setting the course for public policy education in India. And our inspiration for this panel was that this topic should be something that we keep discussing, not just in this IPPN, but hopefully in future IPPNs as well, as the state of public policy education in India and the necessities and the demands made of it keep changing over time. As we have already gone over our participants, I would like to take this moment to talk a little bit about the motivation behind this panel. Can everybody see my screen? Arushi, are the slides visible?
Yes, please. Okay. Yes.
Great. Sorry, I should have asked that in the first slide. But the motivation behind this panel was to really take a stock, do a stock check of the status of academic public policy research and education in India. And the studies that we tried to refer to in designing this panel were few and scattered and scanned. And we figured that this panel would be a great way of trying to, hear from you directly about this topic. And the main motivation or the main question motivating this panel is, to what extent does public policy education in India prepare graduates to meet domestic policy needs while being aligned with international best practices? So it's a very broad question. It doesn't have a direct answer. And I think the answer will keep evolving each time we have this panel. And so for today's panel, what we want to focus on are three topics. Mainly curriculum, pedagogy, and faculty. These three are the main topics usually in designing a curriculum, in designing public policy programs. And we would like to hear from each of you about your experience with these on these three topics in your respective institutions. We would like to focus on postgraduate master's programs because we figured that undergraduate programs can have a very high level of variation in terms of what they offer as public policy. And so we would like to keep our focus on postgraduate programs, but if you have some insight on undergraduate programs as well, please feel free to jump in. A little bit about the format going forward. Professor Sudarshan has kindly agreed to be the chair. So I would invite Professor Sudarshan to make some opening remarks on the motivation behind the panel. And then I will lead you through myself and Professor Daya will lead you through the three main topics. And we have some guiding questions that can help you, streamline your response. So if each of you can please take about 3 minutes or so per topic, then we would be able to do this round 3 times. Is this a clear enough format for everybody? Is that okay? All right.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So before we move on to curriculum design, may I please invite Professor Sudarshan to please make some opening remarks before opening up the roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishani. Yes, as you say, these are questions that every time anyone involved with public policy education gets together will have to raise, because given that public policy as a discipline which is taught to students who are undergraduates seeking a postgraduate degree is relatively recent in India compared to, say, the United States, where it's been long established. And the reason that this seems to have taken hold now is because there's been a sea change in the attitude of government and policymakers. In India, we've had the British civil service heritage. And so the assumption has been that policy is made by those already in government, and only they needed to worry about what is public policy. And but then there's now a realization that just as war is too important to be left to generals, public policy is much too important to be left to a group of policymakers in what we in Delhi call North Bloc and South Bloc, or maybe now the Niti Aayog. So there's been an opening of minds, if you like. There used to be a Professor Raj Krishna, a very great professor of economics in Jaipur, who coined the term that the government is knowledge proof. Now that's no longer true. At one point, government and those working in government didn't feel the need to reach out to any think tank or to any or university or any other expertise outside themselves. And I keep saying as a joke that since the Indian Civil Service started its training in Balliol College, which had a master called Benjamin Jowett, and the limerick in Balliol College was, my name is Benjamin Jowett, I am the master of this college, and what I don't know isn't knowledge. So that's been kind of how the government perceived the outside world with respect to policy making. That's changed enormously. And that's what's opened up the possibility that now there are many more think tanks. Government relies on consulting agencies. Government knows that it doesn't have domain expertise and needs to reach out to people. And this has created a great employment opportunity, which is why public policy schools are now, coming up practically one, every month maybe. I mean, I'm just wildly stating that, but very rapidly, all of the law schools are starting public policy programs. The IITs are starting public policy programs. The IIMs have always had a policy group from the very beginning. IIPA was meant to be, the Indian Institute of Public Administration was meant to focus on policy, but it was meant to train senior policymakers. But over time, it's become a kind of an institution that has a department mirroring all the departments of the government. And so policy making as such has kind of receded in an institution that was originally set up precisely to do that. But you've got this, what you might call mission creep. So, an environment ministry is set up, there's an environment department in IIPA, there's a climate change group, a climate change faculty in IIPA. So that's not focusing on what top-end policymakers need to do. And I think the IIPA needs to revisit and go back to its origins in a sense. So this is the landscape in which there's now a fertile ground for public policy schools. Now, before I open it up, I want to say one discovery I've made having joined the School of Public Policy, which in a way I think was an early one. I mean, Terry had a program, Terry University, but taking undergraduates and a full-scale government public policy program, which we launched in 2012. In 2021, I'd say my discovery has been that it's very much needed, not only for policy purposes, but as an intellectual enterprise. Because what has happened with higher education is people have shut themselves up in silos. They do economics honors, political science honors, sociology honors, anthropology honors, and then remain focused in that discipline. But, and public policy cannot be confined to any one discipline. I mean, by its very nature, you need to draw insights from multiple disciplines. And therefore, the pedagogy has to be, in a sense, we can use the term interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, but I actually would describe it as anti-disciplinary, because it is ruled out that the dominance of economics. We need to get an understanding of the limitations of the methods of all of the social sciences and the insights which they offer. So that's been a very exciting journey for us, because our students immediately grasp the fact that people are not divided into the economic man and the political person, or a cultural person or a devotee of some deity. People are people, and all of these are mixed up in them. And public policy is about people and their relationships to other people and to society. So that way of approaching knowledge and the insights of knowledge is a big advantage. And the more, and you mentioned that you're not focusing on undergraduate programs, but I would say it'll be important to begin undergraduate programs that don't have these silos and give a chance for students to understand what are insights from social sciences, how to then specialize in one of them at a later stage maybe, but they are all pertinent and relevant to policy. So I'd stop there, and then we can have the panel go into the nitty-gritty of what you've laid out.
Thank you so much, Professor Sudarshan. I would now like to hand over to Dr. Amar Patnaik. And before that, can I introduce my co-convener, Dr. Dayashankar Maurya, to please take over the outlining of the program.
Thank you, Ishani. Can we have the second slide, please? So thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and I'm really honored to be here. So the first part, we will just directly jump into. The first part is, of course, looking at the curriculum design. That means to how actually public policy schools in India go about designing their curriculum. Do they model looking at Harvard or looking at some other school? Do they look at the job market challenges? Do they really look at the national policy issues? How overall we compare our curriculum? Is there a benchmarking exercise goes on comparing our curriculum with the international schools? And what are the existing challenges? May I invite Honorable Member of Parliament, Shri Amar Patnaik ji, because he may have a little time probably. So maybe, and he's also working as a mentor to one of the public policy schools in India. So may I invite first Dr. Amar Patnaik to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Daya and Ishani. Great to see you guys after 10 years. And thank you, Professor. When I was going through this background notes and my little exposure to mentoring this school at the Xavier University, I thought, the basic question which we have to address while designing curriculum is, what is not public policy? I think the confusion over there is so much that people in public policy schools are are training students for civil services. They're also training students for, you mentioned that in your background note, they're also training students for, job as consultants in government departments. Now government departments have started hiring consultants, like Niti Aayog uses a large number of consultants. So everything is designed for a particular job, and that's unfortunately the scene in India, which is not there actually in the North American universities, or even in the whole of America, or even in London, UK. So as Professor was talking about, Sudarshan was talking about the fact that public policy would be an intellectual, like any other discipline, I would say, should be a place where intellectual exercise and intellectual rigor is there in research, in developing better ways of developing policy and policies not only in designing policy, but also looking at implementation issues. Now, that is not happening because while doing the school, I realized, of course, I now do not have much time. So I started this when I had just taken into retirement from service and had not yet joined politics. So after coming to the parliament, of course, I do not have much time, but I realized that they have also started, I withdrew a little bit, but then they were having a huge curriculum exercise in which they consciously decided to have civil services coaching as one of the themes so that students will apply, sufficient number of students will apply. So unless that kind of and we know that, since having been a civil servant myself, I can tell you with 100% confidence that coaching or learning about public policy from before doesn't give you an edge in qualifying in civil services in any way whatsoever. So it's, the general knowledge is something or that you cannot acquire in a period of 2 years or 3 years and all, and this kind of detailed theory that really doesn't help at all. But somehow people think that it does help. The second aspect is the distinction to be brought between governance, public policy, public administration, public affairs. I think that is still also very hazy in a number of places. Most important, I think, at this juncture, therefore, while designing curriculum, is to decide where do you want to place yourself, and then decide. The two aspects which we talked about, the government initially thinking that they know everything. They are the only people who should be making policy. That has undergone change. Even though it has undergone change, the people who are hired in to make presentations, or strictly speaking, you see, it's the parliament which finally first makes the act, to give impact, to give effect to a public policy. But that policy gets evolved through parliamentary committee discussion. For example, I'm in that committee, a joint parliamentary committee on data protection, and the people come and give presentations. Then we write a report that goes into the modification of the bill. So it's an exercise. So they think that this is the end of. I think that has to change, and the shift away. See, executive education programs in public policy is there everywhere. The IIMs. The MDI, they were the first ones actually, officers coming and getting trained for a course, and study leave and taking a course. That's very easy to do it because honestly, they come, they get trained. How much of it they go back and apply, I really do not know, but definitely they have vision, you get large, and they probably would apply it sometime, but they do not have the pressure of getting a job. Here in a student, when it comes to a master's program, is essentially, unless he's going for a PhD, he's essentially looking for a job because he's comparing it against a master's program in business administration or in engineering or any such courses. So the interdisciplinarity that is supposed to come in public policy courses all over, I think still is based on an understanding that you can coach professors from different silo disciplines and then give them you give some examples of public policy, and that becomes a course. The result is that I have seen the courses that were designed for the school that I was trying to mentor. There I found that it was just basically a lot of theory, but without any understanding of how the policy gets administered in the field and what are the implementation issues. The difference between that and what I went through in, let's say, Kennedy School is that the huge case study-based systems or courses. Now, case study-based courses are not there. I don't find in India. It's the same set of cases, and the cases can come in public policy or in arena of public policy, discipline of public policy, when people start working on them. So this is a chicken egg story. Like you have to have good people, then the curriculum will improve, and then they will be able to teach better. But that's the big challenge. So I still feel that public policy courses in India are sought after by people who are already in job. They're looking for a career shift marginally or a career jump marginally, or in civil services, as you know, there is no career jump because of a course. So it is just like 2 years of time. You get a study leave, so you come and do something, different. I think that's my take.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for highlighting this issue of where we do not have basically people who are looking for a job after the graduation. But some schools do have, for example, Jindal School do gets a lot of students who are basically looking for a job outside after graduating. So maybe I can hear now from Professor Ash Chhatre about ISB's approach in designing the curriculum for their master's program.
Thank you, Daya. And thank you, Ishani. This is a very important panel. And like you said at the very beginning, this needs to happen at higher frequencies. This is also a conversation that is picking up speed, certainly in terms of smaller groups, wherever some of us have gotten together and so on. So I want to use my time to address this question: what has ISB done? And of course, the role of business schools in public policy education is not new. And I am Bangalore Center for Public Policy, and Professor Ramesh is here to talk about that. They've sort of charted new territory, trailblazing programs, not just in terms of masters, but also executive education and bringing in senior government functionaries. So what ISB is doing is certainly following in that path with some modifications. There are two aspects to our strategy that I want to share briefly, and of course I'll be happy to elaborate. The first is to integrate curriculum, pedagogy, as well as faculty development across our MBA program, which has a public policy specialization, our executive education program, and our outreach activities. Our executive education program has two kinds, which is the one-year long-term program, which is supported by the Government of India, as well as short-term programs. The important insight that led us to at least an attempt to integrate across these three very different kinds of students and different kinds of cohorts is that because of the dynamic and rapidly evolving nature of the demand side, what the clients demand, what the nature of jobs, the nature of skills that are needed, it is important to integrate it across these cohorts so that there is no disjunction, so that the master students don't get trained in something that is different from what the mid-level senior bureaucrats get trained in. The second important aspect that I would like to share is the development and use of India-specific cases with protagonists from India. And like Dr. Patnaik alluded to, we started with this realization that there are really very few well-developed cases that we can use in the classroom for public policy education in India. And that is not just about pedagogy. I mean, the case method is well established in business education or in rural management and so on. But it's also about content and curriculum. What are the cases that need to be developed? And 5 years ago, I find myself using cases from the 1990s that are really not relevant for 2015 or today for 2020. And between these two, that we try to, the same faculty teach PGP, mid-level or senior bureaucrats, as well as short-term executive education. And second, to develop content for that integrates curriculum and pedagogy through case material from India, with protagonists from India and protagonists that are available for interaction with students. So there is a DC in Barabanki, DM in Barabanki. There is a additional secretary, Jal Shakti. And they are protagonists of these cases that we are doing with Labasna, so that they are now being used in training professionals. That makes the cases live. And of course, we try to do it using multimedia. So those two innovations, I believe, and of course, we did not innovate in any of these. We borrowed from other institutions and other programs, sometimes within ISB. But bringing them together in our public policy education has provided very tangible benefits. And I believe this is something that is new and still evolving. But this is something that constitutes our response to a dynamic and rapidly evolving field where the demand for skills and specialization in jobs cannot be predicted 5 years in advance. So we need to stay on top of the content, and we keep our faculty updated on that content so that our classroom is relevant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. So again, I think Professor Chhatri has also highlighted the importance of case-based method and how the limited number of cases. Maybe I switch over a little bit about the selection of courses, how we design the core courses, how we come, what set of core courses should be included in these programs. And can I ask Professor Ramesh to share about the experience at IIM Bangalore, and then followed by Professor Naren at MDI Gurgaon.
Okay, thank you. I find this discussion very, very interesting and highly insightful and productive. I think, as you said, I would be very happy to be part of many such discussions and like that, because we are all piled a lot of experience and we want to really pull it together to really arrive at something. That's why I really look at it. So, I mean, you are talking about the courses and program. In 2000, CPP started, like Professor Ashwini was saying. I started with that, in fact, more or less. And we started this public policy management program, almost like the Masons program of Kennedy School. We surveyed a lot of schools, and we also had a tie-up with Syracuse University. One dilemma we all face in India, at least. So in US, we have a clear MPA, MPP. Okay. Now we have this dilemma, should we be a pure play public policy school or public management also? In India, we still need a lot of management. This is what I keep telling my colleagues also and telling myself also, that why did DOPT choose and UNDP choose IIM Bangalore? Because they wanted to house it in a management school and not in an economic school. They could have just chosen a Delhi school or something like that, to traditionally where public policy really belonged in the earlier days and like that. Okay. So we try to do this balancing of, public policy, pure play analysis, and then evaluation and like that, and also into development area and also into public management. So we also give leadership. We also do, organizational behavior. We also teach operations management, which you won't find in MPA, MPP and all that in US, because we are still dealing with a lot of operational issues like PSUs and all. Second dilemma we always face even today is that we cater to two markets, at least from IIM. One is the government market and another a corporate market, or let's say the non-government, which can be think tanks, NGOs, private sector, and everybody. Okay, but there's always a dilemma. The roles are very different. The way the bureaucrats play the role, and then the corporates is purely advisory, and then they look for more, like Dr. Patnaik was saying, very advisory and then supportive evidences, analysis, and like that. But actual policy making and analysis and processes get done within government, highly concentrated within the government. So we also, like Dr. Ashwini was saying, started coordinating with Masuri Academy and then IGNFA, Forest Academy and all. So that, internally, they also have to develop this public policy management. Okay, we can do from outside. Reality is all the training, most of the training happens for them there in that colleges. And also they play the 90% of the role. We are only playing for the external change agent sort of role we do, or advisory role like that. So this is the second dilemma we keep doing. So we try to keep on, so should we have more policy courses? Should we have more management courses? So one way we resolved is that let's have some basic core, the core subjects we reduced, and we started offering more electives. Now there we have an advantage. What we did is, one advantage we have in being in management school is, Because we have got a program running for 20 years, we have developed a constituency of professors interested in from finance, OB, operations, and all strategy, interested in public policy issues. Otherwise, they may not have taken so much interest in public policy and public system. So I can say today we have a constituency of professors who keep dealing with it. This is also enabled because we do a lot of training, mid-career program. I myself would have trained for about more than 3,000 officers, and I've taken about 600, 700 officers abroad also. Okay, so that's a sort of both we had the exposure and we are given the exposure. Okay, so that has also helped. So that's another one. Where do we focus? Research, training, and then this one. I mean, if you really look at the mid-career training programs and like that. Now, of course, government has gone back to the mode of doing it from their own colleges, and we providing the supporting role and like that. So that's the third part that I would really do. And basically increasing, we keep facing this dilemma of which is our market, what we are catering, and what does our guys do in those companies. Is it only an advisory role? Are they looking at only financial skills? Are they looking at strategic skills? Are they looking at transformational skills? So these are the assignments which they keep doing. And then how do we really build up? So we have been doing this balancing act, and then we keep identifying which faculty may be required or who we should loop in, which course we should loop in. One problem we face, which other, maybe university minorities, we don't have sociologists, we don't have political science, we don't have anthropologists and like that. Okay, so that's where we lose out. The gain is that we have finance process, we have marketing strategy. So government and the people have to decide, what is it would make a good mix. But I think, like he said, Dr. Patnaik said, suppose IIT may be offering on technology policy. The NLS could be offering from legal and public policy. Okay. And then universities could be giving, like what he said, multidisciplinary, like, it can bring in sociology, political science. Let's say if JNU had to offer a public policy program and like that. And then we are the management school. So we try to mesh the management and then the IT. My one last point is in 2005, AOM had a conference. In that, the theme was, how do we take the management scholarship to public policy? So in fact, even the very lingo, what you have here and those frameworks, how much I can really extend to the public policy arena. That's what we keep looking here like that. Yeah, I hope this answers your question, sir. Or at least give the pointers.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So I think the broader consensus is depending upon the market to which the school is serving, probably they are, and depending upon the institution's developed capacity, whether it's management or law or other social sciences. Maybe we can hear from Professor Vishal Narain. Probably they are also involved in training bureaucrats.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So good evening, everyone. And thank you to the conference organizers and to the panel organizers, to Ishani and Dayashankar, for this opportunity. I will speak from my own experience in teaching in the Public Policy and Management program at MDI Gurgaon. I joined in 2006. So I wasn't so much involved in the conceptualization or the initiation of the program and the school, but I will talk a little bit about curriculum and the context from my own teaching in the program, in teaching courses on public policy and institutions and development and natural resource governance. So one of the things, as everyone here seems to say, is that the curriculum really depends on the context, in the institutional context in which the program is delivered, and who the target audience is. So being a business school, just like IMB, our program also combines elements of management education with concepts and theories around public policy, governance, the new public management. Though I think one important choice to be made within the social sciences is whether the curriculum leans more towards the positivist sciences like economics or more towards the interpretive sciences like sociology and anthropology. And that has to do with the larger connect that we make with the nature of the policy sciences. So positivist-oriented public policy programs would speak much more to the prescriptive dimensions of public policy, and interpretive programs that incline more towards the interpretive dimensions, would speak more to the process dimensions, to the politics, policy, the questions of power, and so on and so forth. So at MDI, we do have in our pool of faculty, faculty members that cut across management, but also economics and sociology and anthropology, and that really allows us to give us a very good blend of theories, concepts, and tools that participants will find relevant in analyzing public policy, in talking about public policy, in theorizing about it, and in articulating about it. So one of the important insights also, and of course, the question of job market is not so relevant to us because we have mid-career civil servants and they're not looking for a placement after the program. They go back to their cadre and they continue in their service. But one of the things that I learned immensely about the curriculum is that, when I started teaching this course in 2006, one of the things that hit me is that all of the large chunk of the public policy literature is developed by scholars in the West. And at that time, I was really looking for something that I could offer my participants that was grounded in the context of India, that was grounded in the context of the global South. And what I started doing was I started synthesizing the public policy literature. And when I started presenting that to the class, I encouraged the participants to reflect on it in the light of their own experience. And I said, look, this is the public policy literature. It's developed in the West. And how do you see its relevance in the context of India? How do you juxtapose your experience with the body of knowledge that already exists? And that whole process culminated in publishing a book called Public Policy Review from the South, which basically takes these concepts of public policy and relates them to the Indian context. So the point I want to make is that teaching a program like this one also offers opportunities for curriculum development. So if you use your public policy classroom as a kind of an experiment, as a kind of a laboratory for developing knowledge on public policy processes, you can create knowledge on public policy. And for future batches of public policy students, that's curriculum. That's something that they can read. That's something that they can assimilate. That's something they can internalize. And the other thing I would like to say also is that given the profile, they're mid-career civil servants. One thing that's very important is that is to give them space to internalize the literature that they're being exposed to. Otherwise, they lose interest. So if you give them a theory, a concept, or a tool, you have to give them space to reflect on what does it mean to them in the context of public service delivery, or how do they translate that into something that they will find relevant and practical in the discharge of their duties. So these were my comments, and I will stop at that for now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So I think Professor Naren has highlighted another big issue is because most of our textbooks and the theories which we use to teach students are basically drawn from the West, and therefore there may be a challenge in probably fitting these theories and models into the Indian context. And I just want to hear from others, maybe Professor Sudarshan and Professor Dr. Patnaik. In designing this curriculum, do you feel the need for orienting or selecting the core courses which are really more suited towards Indian context? So, Professor Sudarshan, I think you.
No, one of the important things we realized is that our students, they are young. They've just done. They are not mid-career trained people. They don't know how to talk to village people, right? The backgrounds they come from is fairly privileged, and they've led sheltered lives. So one of the things we consciously do is to force them, and after a point they enjoy it, to take them to surrounding villages. We see our university and our academic block and its architecture is like an unidentified flying object that has come and been placed in the wheat and paddy fields of Haryana. And it's a kind of, it has an alien appearance to all the people around us. And so we take a lot of pain and effort to get them to go out, so if there's a health mission or a Shiksha Abhiyan program, whatever it is, to go talk to people around. First learn how to communicate, and then we try to emphasize that, listening to village people is important, because their knowledge is no less inferior, in fact, than those that are given in classrooms and textbooks and so on. There's got to be some value placed on what people know. And the only way you can do that is by listening to people, going there and getting them to accept you, which is a bit of a challenge. Occasionally there'll be a Jat agitation on reservations and so on, and all these villages will close up because the military sent its people by helicopter to our campus and lodged themselves here. So for a period of time, we had some, hostile reactions with the village around us. But now so that's one important part. So that you might call it experiential learning or whatever. But the curriculum itself is really about, about insights from social sciences. Social science as opposed to natural science. The problem with, natural science, no matter what theory you have about how the planets will move, or how a plant will grow, or how animals will behave, they will behave in that way. But human beings being self-interpreting agents, the moment you postulate a theory about how they might behave or what they would do, or some expectations, knowing that it will contaminate the data from which you started, right? It will change. So there's got to be, one of the things we try to get to understand is look at social sciences as a whole and understand where it's useful. See, economics, there are regularities in human life. Understand that people go to sleep at night, wake up in the morning, so you can have good statistical, interpretations and so on. But you cannot really, we don't do, we can sort of say, oh, this factor influenced this, right? We're doing econometric regressions, but that's very limited. It has its uses. You can say how many people will die on Delhi's roads in a year, but you cannot tell where they would die or who would die or how they would die. But there are uses for certain social sciences, limitations. So we'd like to get our students firstly to understand this body of knowledge, which needs to be integrated. That is, you can't simply be an economist and say, I will identify causal factors by using data. You cannot say, but you should also think of the reverse thing. Such a phenomenon has occurred. What has caused it? What caused a whole lot of women to come out and occupy the streets against the Citizenship Act? What has caused it? Now, for that, you need a more ethnographic sensibility that comes from a discipline like anthropology, right? So, because in the end, whatever policies we make, it's got to be accepted and understood by people. And people may, why are the farmers protesting? Actually, if an economist would say what the laws are proposing are sound and sensible, why are they protesting? Because they anticipate, they have a fear that certain things might happen, that the corporates will take over, that they will lose their identity as farmers. They will become laborers, they will become employees of somebody else. So these factors have to be understood, right? So, and for that, you need multiple disciplines. So our basic curriculum is drawing insights, not making them into economists and anthropologists and so on. But what are the key insights from these disciplines? You can name them, right? The importance of the margin in economics, comparative advantage. These are all, not once stated, seem obvious, but intuitively, you have to get at them. And then all disciplines have that. So our basic curriculum is that. But what we've tried to do is to not call it by that name. Our curriculum is designed in terms of issues, inequality. Inequality, if you want to understand inequality, you have to understand the social structure of this country. It cannot just be income inequality and use data that's coming on GDP and distribution and so on. So you need the Gini coefficient. So we need that. So that's one basic grounding. The other is, I would emphasize, experiential learning. To be able to communicate, to listen to. See, one of the big challenges I believe in our public policy in our country is the public is missing in the public policy design and making. we need to spend time and effort talking to people, ordinary people, about what they think should be done. It's not that they know all the answers. If they knew all the answers, they'd have sorted out their lives. But they have a perception and insights that we must understand. So for that, the first skill really is listening and communication. So we emphasize a lot of that. We force our students to go out and spend time. And we invite the village people to come, to give talks in our campus, have a sit down and have a dialogue with them, because we can't do too much more. Because you see, unlike other countries, Dr. Patnaik mentioned the importance of cabinet, the select committees of parliament. But those committees don't necessarily invite, academicians to come and, present evidence. And that varies from country to country and so on, or university to university. I studied in Oxford. All my teachers would go off to London to give evidence to select committees in the House of Commons. I then went to study in Cambridge, and Cambridge Dons were not interested in going out and talking to people in Westminster. That's the culture. Cambridge is a very science-oriented culture. What I'm trying to say is that we need to create more opportunities for our students outside of the classroom, so that they learn something, right? And I'd end by saying that the Executive Education Week, we are very grateful to officers of West Bengal and Orissa. We have an agreement with them. They come here for a week for a training program, then they go to Lee Kuan Yew, and then they go to Oxford. We've structured it. But when they have a session in our school, I make much of my faculty sit and listen. And it's really the other way around. It's not that we are training these state public service commission selected officers of Orissa on anything. We open them up and we learn from them, and our faculty learns from them. Because and that's been one of the most exciting things. So I don't think we have anything to offer them, but we have much to gain from listening to them. And they come up with, I don't know why all Orias love poetry. I mean, they'll recite poetry, they'll tell narratives. So I think there is a kind of a relationship where our executive education programs help improve the pedagogy that we have for our master's students.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Sudarshan. Now, in the interest of the time, let me combine the rest two themes of faculty and pedagogy into one, and maybe we can ask the in terms of the eminent panelists whether because the challenge here is that we may not have sufficient faculty members who are trained in the discipline of public policy in our schools. And therefore, what challenges you face in terms of recruiting this and developing this faculty, and what other challenges we face that the existing faculty members are interested to teach in the public policy programs. Maybe we can start with Shri Amar Patnaik ji and then move to others.
There, actually, I was listening to all the panelists, particularly Professor Sudarshan. I have to say that executive education is not a problem. Executive education in public policy, when the people come there, they're not looking out after the completion of the course for a job or for career growth. Nothing happens. And therefore, they can, of course, relapse into poetry. But the problem is when we have fresh students, master students, after the end of the course, they would look for a job, for an assignment. Nobody in India, no parent in India is going to spend about 15, 16 or even 6-7 lakhs to send the children with no job prospect. Now, therefore, that is where the problem is. The basic crux of the problem is that the policymakers in India, or where I was earlier, the bureaucracy, we generally think that it can be sorted by us ourselves, and maybe you hire some people, some consultants for the purpose of giving specific knowledge. See, the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, our foundation course. Our foundation courses are actually the best way designed courses for public policy, I would say, because people from different backgrounds are coming. Somebody with Sanskrit, somebody with Hindi, somebody with physics, somebody with political science, and somebody with economics, of course. And then they're given a flavor of everything from law to sociology to everything, anthropology and ethnographic studies, everything. And then when at the end of the day, when they come and they learn along the way, and of course they're starting as in every of these, all the services, they're starting at the lowest level, so they understand the system. And then when they're coming for a mid-career program, actually they are coming for more content. I can tell you this much, that if there is a physics student, you would like to have more of economics, because he is posted or has been posted, he is currently posted in the Ministry of Economic Affairs or in the Department of Financial Services. So and therefore, there when you are bringing in a particular faculty from business management or from anywhere, if it's a university, it's probably easy to bring it from political science to understand the role power plays. I can tell you this much, every civil servant in India understands the role power plays in public policy more than any of the politicians that we hear. In fact, my book, which I've written during the course of my PhD on power asymmetries in the context of rural India while implementing programs, I can share with you that when I wanted to start the PhD, I wanted to do a simple econometric model, be very prescriptive and reach a conclusion, binary solutions. But when I tried to find out that why government programs are not delivering the same kind of results across, it is designed at the same place, one size fits all, of course, doesn't apply, we know all that, but it is designed at one place, supposed to be delivered uniformly, with little differences maybe, but why are there only oases of excellence amongst a huge number of failures? So that is what my book, which was published in Power of Excellence. So then when I did that, I realized, and I can say with full conviction now, that every action of ours is having a power element. So unless you understand the power element, whether it is gender power or caste power or social power, any opportunities power, everything has a power element. And therefore my research, which was starting with neoclassical institutions, everybody talks about institutions, but institutions is not necessarily formal institutions. A huge number of informal institutions in villages like the caste system impacts the implementation of public policy. Now, these are the things which the bureaucrat at the mid-career level really understands. So when he's coming to a public policy school, he is trying to get more material in terms of content-specific expert knowledge, let us put it that way. But of course, if you want to have a master in public policy course in India, why the people when they come out, why is that? I'm telling you why, while mentoring this school, we don't get students. And whereas being an MP, I have several interns, including people from OP Jindal, who are interning with me, master's programs, and they're all, then there is this PRS, which is doing a brilliant job. I think the PRS is doing a brilliant job. And those people who are coming in over there, they are coming from different backgrounds. I have from OP Jindal, I have from PRS, I have also from Delhi School of Economics. They come differently, but their goal there is not to get a job, but to intern with an MP, get a recommendation to go abroad, largely to do a PhD or something like that, or use my good officers to get, I have placed some people in Niti Aayog to help them in various branches. Now, this particular ecosystem has to develop. You remember in Kennedy School, the McKinsey comes, everybody comes because they think, every private sector organization thinks that we need a policy specialist, public policy specialist, who will probably provide more meat to their business model. Now that understanding has to come. And as Professor Ramesh was talking, and even Mr. Chatra, that in the MBA program, if they're brought in, it's a great thing actually. Everybody should be doing it. Because public policy can not forget private policy, that is, business management, and social policy, which is very important. So this is one thing that we have to sort it out actually. And then these questions come of faculty and all. Of course, as I said, when you get one particular discipline faculty, let's say from economics, he will interpret a particular event purely from an economics point of view, just as you gave the example of farm laws. I was the person who in 2003 as Director Agricultural Marketing in Orissa, in the steering committee of Government of India, made these laws. And it has taken 17 years, they passed the law, but I from my party, we opposed it because it was looking, we said it should go to the select committee. And by the way, I just want to clarify, in the select committee, we do invite number of people from outside, but need not necessarily be academics. We sometimes call associations, FICCI, it depends on the committee which we have, but they have the full mandate to call. In fact, maybe I could suggest this also to the chairman that we should have mandatorily get some theoretical input, because some MPs or at the parliament level, at least some MPs, particularly Rajya Sabha, they want to know the theoretical content as well. So we can do that. But the point here is, now the serious thought that has to get into the like agriculture law is that the human element, the informal institutions, the non-state actors, everybody is not a state actor. The non-state actors also influence public policy largely, which is what Professor Sundaresh would be knowing about in the agricultural, particularly Punjab, Haryana, the RTS, and why it's not happening in the rest of the country. But they cannot be wished away. They cannot be wished away. In fact, when I did my PhD, I was farmers. We are still having farmers on the road. They are not able to sell. The whole problem is because MSP is a basically market distorting arrangement, administered price mechanism. But who is going to address that particularly? So it's a highly complicated thing. And the best thing, as he said, Professor Ramesh, and even Mr. Vishal, I think Mr. Sudarshan said, that when people come from these backgrounds, it is great to get the knowledge for developing cases. I think we should get into that particular thing. And I remember I have also gone to different places in India as well as outside when I was in the civil service. So when you're completely giving a theoretical lecture to a 10-year or 12-year service guy, he loses interest because he says, "उनको कुछ पता नहीं है, केस तो पता नहीं है, फील्ड में हम लोग जानते हैं सब कुछ." तो but आप जब लेके जाते हैं कि let's say farmer's case, you are saying that this is what an economist is, somebody who's additional secretary agriculture or a secretary agriculture. Then he says that these are the stakeholders, these are the power equations which you haven't taken into account, and that's why you face this problem. Then only you will find that the ownership for public policy courses will improve in India. The ecosystem will improve. Everybody would like to know. In the private sector, when somebody is coming, like my friends who are director of public policy in Facebook, and because I'm in that committee, they all appear. That's again a very different. They're basically to know the government system, to influence the government system, more advocacy kind of a thing. It's not really contributing to policy making, influencing policy. India has a lot to do, and unfortunately, since the Weiner said it in 79, 20 years have passed, and I know all of us are making effort, but it has to get into it. I am personally, as an MP, I'm very happy with the PRS work, but I find those guys are very good. And amongst them, I had lawyers who are passed out from National Law University, and I have also people who come from Political Science, Delhi University. I also have people, because I also assist all my MPs in all their policy briefs. So therefore, I have a team. The team has people from OP Jindal. The team has people from Aziz Premji. The team has people from in fact, Professor Rajiv Goda used to also tell him in Ramesh, because very close to him. So there I found that somehow they're all again coming with silos. This interpretation is missing. When a law is being made, the NLU people are able to interpret it very well, and I like them, really. But they do not know the context. And that is where, a public policy school should actually, if they come through that grind, they would understand. So we have to probably somehow, develop this. We have to have a circle which goes this way and develop it. And it's a lot of work that has to be done. Two clear silos. One, executive education, very different. I think it's pretty easy to monitor, to run that. Another one, fresh courses for public policy. I think it is very important. And government has a role to play. These fresh people have to come into the system as lateral entry at very young stage and not at the joint secretary or director level. And I personally feel that they should come at the BDO level, the block development officer, the collector level. Every collector should be having, because that's where program gets implemented. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for this insight. So I think somewhere we are coming to a conclusion that there's a lot to be learned, and the academics need to learn from practitioners, and the practitioners also need some insight from the theories. But just in the interest of time, we are all... Yeah.
Since Dr. Patnaik mentioned the BDO, I have to quote a line from Mr. S.K. Day, whom I invited to a seminar when I was in the Ford Foundation at the IIC. He was Mr. Community Development Administrator, then Minister. Mr. S.K. Day said that, somewhat wistfully, little did I know, he said, when I created this office the block development officer, that person would become an officer who blocks development. Is because you see, he, in his original conception, it was someone who was of a high rank, right? Not, like the collector. I mean, the block development officer should be as equipped as, in terms of intelligence and judgment and practical judgment and so on. But then they made it into a lower functionary official, and therefore lost out on what that vision was to achieve. So we need an openness. We need to get enthusiastic, idealistic young people who are there, who want to, why do people join the government? They join it initially with an idealistic motivation. The play is very poor, but they can make a difference to the lives of people. And so my public policy students are also idealistic. They need opportunities. So, if they're put in a district and made to do the work of a block development officer, unlike the earlier block development officers, these people have had the privilege of some education and so on, and we need those opportunities. So I hope, please help us, Dr. Patnaik, to do this. Thank you.
We'll work on this. In fact, it's very, very close to my heart too. When I was in service also, I used to say that every service, whether it's an IRS or INS or railway traffic, this would ultimately it is the people. How close you are to the people, how close you are to the household. Just as we are doing our politics, in our politics today, all parties are trying to reach out to every individual voter. But in our policy space, we are not reaching out to an individual. We are trying to do it at a very high level. And therefore, this one-size-fits-all is not working. And all the factors and vary. When we are doing politics, why a particular village, some people will vote for us, another group will not vote, so what you should do so that we can get their vote. That ultimately should also factor into public policy teaching.
All right. Thank you, everybody, especially for the last segment there. I realize we're completely out of time. But if it's possible, can I please ask Professor Narayan, Professor Chhatre, and Professor Ramesh to please give us one concluding wish for their public policy pedagogy in their institutes. One, please, in the interest of time, before Arushi gets angry at me. Please, if I can ask Professor Chhatre first, one wish for public policy at ISB, and then onwards. Thank you.
Well, my general wish for public policy education, not just in India, is that on the one hand, we should stop imagining it as a discipline. We don't want students who have taken 20 courses in public policy. Like Sudarshan said, we want students who have taken 5 courses in anthropology, 4 courses in economics, 3 courses in interpretive methods, and that each student takes 20, if no 2 students take the same number of 30 courses. My wish is that let 1,000 flowers bloom, that we have students that have very different capabilities, interests, motivations, and that they get a strong foundation in interacting with all the stakeholders to push the frontier, not just of knowledge, but also of practice. But we will not get there if we push public policy towards being a discipline, because then it will get stuck. We must protest against any such effort, and we must diversify.
Thank you so much, Professor Chhatre, for those words. May I invite Professor Ramesh, please, for your one wish for public policy.
Sir, your audio is not working.
Yeah, Ishani, I don't think we'll be able to conclude today anyway. So my simplest point I want to leave a last thought with you all is that if we know what the government wants, what the corporates want, we can deliver. I'll tell you what I mean. For all that we do public policy program for the last 20 years, the consultants who are presenting to Dr. Patnaik, when they recruit from an institute, they recruit regular MBAs than people who have done public policy program. That's the reality. They think that they can double up because they're also looking for technical skills, and public policy skill lies within the government. Okay. So we have to really see how do we make ourselves relevant to both corporates and government. For that, we need to get a lot more understanding of what they really want and what we should deliver. We can deliver, we can get faculty, we can recruit, we can develop and all that. I feel there is still this gap between what is needed and what we are doing and like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramesh. And last but not least, Professor Narayan, please.
Okay, so I think my final wish for today, but not forever, on public policy education would be to secure a greater connect between teaching and research on public policy, and so that we create more knowledge on public policy processes that's grounded in the Indian context, maybe grounded to the context of the global South. So I would like to see a greater connect between teaching and research in public policy, and that's what I would say to conclude.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much for all your input. Diane, myself, I think in the last 1 hour, we have gained so much perspective about public policy education in India that that gives us a lot of food for thought. And again, I would encourage this topic to be something that we keep visiting in the Ippn Network Conference every year. Thank you again so much for your time. Daya, would you like to say any concluding thoughts? There, you might be muted.
Sorry. So it has been really a learning experience hearing from people who have started public policy schools, have been leading public policy schools, and some of the key ideas and key issues which have been many of the public policy schools are facing. And so hopefully we'll continue this dialogue in future, and we look forward to. Thank you very much again for everybody. Thank you very much for joining. I especially thankful to Shri Patnaik ji for joining this session, and to all the esteemed panelist members. Yeah, Ishani, you may want to add a last couple of words, and then.
No. Again, a lot of thank you to you individually, and also lovely to see Amar Patnaik after so many years. So thank you for the conference, the panel, and the reunion. Arushi, you may take over. I believe we have another session hereafter.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishani. Thank you, Daya, and thank you all the panelists of this panel. Thank you so much.